Let's be real, 2024 was seriously lacking when it came to good movies. Out of the countless films that got the green light and were released to audience around the world, only a small handful were actually worth watching. In my opinion, the only real standouts were Doom Part 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, Godzilla X Kong, and The White Robot. And that's like about it. Everything else, I feel like it was straight up buns. Kung Fu Panda? It had great potential to be like the final chapter that could have cemented the franchise to be one of the greatest anime series of all time. But instead, we got like just a bunch of mid films. I didn't really like it. And when something is mid compared to what could have been greatness, it just made it look worse. Then there's like Inside Out 2 and Venom 3. Both of them were pretty forgettable, with Venom 3 being slightly better than Inside Out 2. And finally, we're not going to talk about Joker 2. But 2025 completely shifted the ecosystem of the shitty ass movie industry. First of all, let's talk about Jurassic Reborn. It's not an amazing movie, but it was definitely a huge step up from all the other Jurassic World films besides the first one. Next, we have Thunderbolts. This movie is amazing and it really saved Marvel for at least a bit after all the disastrous projects being pushed out. We can also not forget about the K-pop Demon Hunters and Singers, which were like really good. Overall, this year has been good movie-wise in all genres, and we have Fantastic Four and Black Phone 2 coming out later this year, which I have high hopes for. But the topic of this video, as you may have guessed, is a new Superman movie directed by James Gunn. Before we talk about this any further, there will be spoilers for me to fully express how good the movie is. First of all, let's talk about the cast and characters that are in the film. I feel like all the actors being casted are either okay choices or the best choices for the characters that James Gunn wants to put forth. I don't think that there's like a singular bad cast, and it shows throughout the quality of the film. One of the things I really appreciate about the movie is how it incorporated Krypto into the Superman story for the first time. It felt fresh and added a new fun dynamic to the Superman universe. I also appreciate how Lois Lane was written. She wasn't portrayed as a dependent or constantly chasing after Superman. She felt like her own person and capable and strong, which added a bunch to the story, which I really liked. But most importantly, I really liked how Superman and Supergirl were written, especially Superman. Let's talk about him first. In the past, especially in the Snyder films, Superman was often written as Super First and Man Second. And on the surface, that makes a bunch of sense. After all, he was an alien from another planet, not a human. But we have to remember that he was raised by humble farmers in Kansas and people with a strong moral compass. That's the real reason he wants to become a hero. Not because of where he's from, but because of how he was raised. Snyder's Superman is portrayed as a mythical, brooding figure, someone who's struggles with his identity and the weight of his powers. He often feels detached from humanity, more like a distant guardian than someone who truly belongs. On the other hand, Gunn's take on Superman feels more optimistic and grounded. He wants to be a part of humanity even more than he wants to be a superhero, and he doesn't do it for the attention or the glory. He does it because he embodies what humanity should be: compassionate, kind, and hopeful. And to me, that's what Superman always truly represented, and that's why I prefer this new version of Superman over the old one. And moreover, adding on to the fact that Gunn made Superman man first and Super second, this could also be shown in his fights and durability. Gunn really did not change much about Superman's powers and ability, but he did make Superman noticeably more weaker. In the past Snyder films, Superman only ever struggles against Batman, Steppenwolf, and General Zod. The only reason why Superman struggled against Batman was because he abused his one and only weakness, kryptonite. Steppenwolf was a god. When a god goes against another god, of course there will be struggles, and the same logic applies to General Zod, who is like the same species as Superman. And speaking of Zod, I feel like Superman killing Zod to save a family of humans was written very well in theory, but what ruined the whole scene for me was that they could just avoided a beam when Superman was holding Zod back, and that would result in Superman not snapping Zod's neck, making their sacrifices in vain. That said, I do have issues with the film. Don't get me wrong, it's a good movie. Definitely not bad, but I feel like a lot of the praise that is being given is a bit overblown. I think that mostly because DC has been putting out so many disappointing movies for a long time that when something decent finally comes out, people overreact and treat it like it's a masterpiece. One thing I really didn't like was how Lex Luthor was portrayed. His motives felt unclear and his final actions didn't make much sense to me. On top of that, I wasn't a fan of how James Gunn seemed to Disneyfy everything. There was a rumor going around about a scene in the original cut where Krypto, Superman's dog, gets punched by Ultraman, one of the villains. Apparently, they removed the scene after early test audience reacted poorly to it. I agree with Moist Critical's take on this. Cutting that scene felt like it ruins the whole point of what it's supposed to be. The moment was meant to clearly establish that these villains are cruel and evil and that we're supposed to hate them. These days, it felt like movies tried too hard to make villains likable or relatable, which doesn't make much sense in a classic superhero versus supervillain story. In these kind of movies, we're supposed to root for the heroes and despise the villains, not sympathize with them.